Hi, welcome to Maggie Chats Books. Today I'm going to do my August mid-month wrap-up. I've read 6 books so far, so I'll just go over those now. The first book I read was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This book is a dystopian novel where life is pretty poor. There is a video game that most people escape into. The creator of the video game has passed away and has a contest that anybody can solve a puzzle within the video game will get a prize, which is billions of dollars. So it's about 3 teenagers pretty much who attempt to win the prize. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really entertaining. It was a page turner for me. I gave it 4 stars. I know there's a movie coming out, and several people, when they heard I was reading this book, said I will not like the casting choice. And if you read the book, you'll understand what they mean. It's not true to the characters that are portrayed in the book. But I did enjoy this one, 4 stars for me. And the next book I read was The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ozawa. And this book was one selected for a online book club that I joined just actually in August. This book is about a woman who is a housekeeper who goes to work for a man, a former professor, who was involved in a car accident and only has approximately 80 minutes worth of memory at any time. He remembers his life prior to the accident, but after the accident he only remembers 80 minutes total. It's a really touching story. The woman has a son that she introduces to the professor. That relationship is just so sweet. I really enjoyed this book, and I did give this one 4 stars. The next book I read was Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is another dystopian novel. This takes place in a boarding school, then a halfway house, and then later on in an adulthood. There's 3 main characters, a boy and 2 girls. You've learned about them through one of the girls' narratives. The first 2/3 of this book was so frustrating for me in that the narrative would start with, this happened, or this is what was going to happen, but I'll get to that later. Or he was this way because, well, I'll tell you later. And I found it so frustrating. And then when they started to talk about things that you cared about, they would go off on a 5 or 6 page tangent about something. And I just found it frustrating, as I said. The third part of the book got very interesting. You got to the meat of what this whole book was about. It was very well written in the third part, but I honestly almost DNF'd it before I got there. I did enjoy it in the end. I only gave it 3 stars because of the issues I had with 2/3 of the book. I did watch the movie afterwards. The movie was done very well, but it didn't live up to my expectations, I have to say. Next book I read was Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. And this book was one that I predicted would be a 5-star book for me, and I was happy to find that it lived up to that reputation. This book is about a couple who are unable to have a child. The husband's family decides that he needs to take another wife. He does. So many things happen in this book. You think you have it all figured out, and you don't. I don't want to say much more about this because the surprise factor, sometimes tragic, sometimes good, sometimes totally off from left field, is just really well done in this book. I could not put this book down. I thought it was really good. It's also a good narrative on humans and the mistakes we may make and how we have to deal with it. So I gotta say, this was a good 5-star book, and I really recommend this one. The next book I read was Glass Castle by Jeannette. This is an autobiographical novel from the author about her childhood growing up with very eccentric parents. She lived mostly in poverty, moved around quite a bit, and it wasn't because her parents couldn't earn a living, they just chose not to. Her father was also an alcoholic, which had a lot of horrible impacts on her life. It also tells about her when she is an adult and her dealings with her parents as an adult. I won't say much more about this other than it was difficult to read in some areas because you feel like you're invading her privacy. And I think that's with most autobiographies, is that when you tell the rough parts, you feel like you're eavesdropping on their lives, and it was very well written. I know that they're making a movie out of it. I'm not sure I want to see the movie, but it was a good book. I gave this one 3.5 stars. The next book I read was The Tidal Zone by Sarah Moss. This book is about a 15-year-old girl who collapses at school. Her heart stops and she is revived, taken to the hospital, and the doctors are a little stumped on what her diagnosis is. The story is told by her father. The father tells pretty much 3 separate stories within this book. One is the story of her illness, trying to find a diagnosis and the impact to him, his wife, and his other daughter, as well as the daughter that is sick. He also tells about his father, a Jewish man raised by Jewish parents in the United States, and then he comes back to Europe. And then the last story he tells has to do with a project he is working on dealing with Coventry Cathedral. And so you get all 3 of those stories like every other chapter or so in the book. I really enjoyed the part about the cathedral. He talks a lot about it, and I found that very fascinating. It was almost like a history lesson. The story about his father was okay. I guess I just didn't know why I was hearing it. It almost seemed like a totally different story, and I'm sure there was some tie-in. I just didn't get it. And then when he talks about his daughter's illness, which was the one thing I thought would be difficult to read and I would really care about, and I didn't. I just couldn't empathize with him. You don't find out many emotions of this family that you would think would just be full of emotions, and I didn't get any of that out of this book. The reviews made me think I would love this book, and I really didn't. And I was close to DNFing it a couple times. I made it through the book and probably didn't get everything out of it I should have. I didn't understand what the author was trying to tell me. I just didn't care for this book. I gave it 2.5 stars. So that's what I read so far this month. Please let me know if you read any of these books and what you thought of them, especially if you liked the ones that I didn't care for or you didn't like the ones that I did care for. I'd love to hear your opinions. Thank you for watching. Bye.